So let's begin. First of all, tonight's learning is dedicated to Chana Fega Bat Yehudit. May she find her zivug hagun soon and have many happy years together with a beautiful family, mazal and beracha, and for all of Klal Yisrael. And Aharon Uziel ben Yehudit for Refuah Shlema Mamash, he and all of Klal Yisrael, and for the Refuah Shlema of Menachem Mendel ben Sarabatya and Devorah Fega Bat Rezel. Okay, so as always, a few small matters of housekeeping. Number one, I do have my feeds open in front of me, and I will make every effort. I will make every effort to answer or deal with any issues that you bring up if you're in our virtual audience. We love you from afar. And please share the heck out of it. Again, if you're watching it, share it. Comment on it. Tell me that you're there. As we have some beautiful, wonderful guests here, and that tell me that they watch, but I didn't know that they were watching because they didn't say anything. If they would have said something, then I would have known. So please, if you're here, if you see something, say something, as they say in the TSA. Okay. Now, basically, the issue that we're going to deal with today is why the heck does Torah suggest, are you comfy? Why the heck does Torah suggest that we have a monarchy? Okay, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this, the Torah, it doesn't suggest a monarchy, it commands a monarchy. And, oh, you know what, I'm going to need a chumash. Do you mind, could you give me a chumash, Michael, from like right there, yeah, there, anywhere, any chumash. Devarim, if you please. Actually, no, that's going to be an annoying one. Okay, we'll do it. A Devarim, if you please. So, in this week's portion, it's Parshat Shoftim, which means judges, and it talks about the branches of Jewish government. So you have the Kohen, and you have the courts, and you have the king, or the KKK, as I like to call it, right? The Kohen, the courts, and the king, the KKK. And what would happen oftentimes? Oh wow, they got you on like a whole wild goose chase over here. Holy cow! Do you see any? There's no Chumash there? So forget it. We'll do it by memory. Don't worry about it. Come sit down, be comfortable. It's all good. Again, these branches of government would fight every once in a while historically. The reason they would fight is for obvious reasons. If you are, let's say, a Hasmonean king, so the Hashmonaim, the Hasmoneans, who were the ones who conquered, who got rid of the Greeks during the time of Hanukkah, they seized the throne as well. And that made them not merely the Kohanim, but also the kings. Well, if they're the Kohanim and the kings, there's only one more branch of government left, which would be the courts, meaning the rabbis. And some of them went around like slaughtering the rabbis to get them out of the way so that they can consolidate all the power. That would be one example. Another example would be Uzziah, who was a king and decided that, I'm such a great king. I think I would really also make a very good Kohen Gadol. I would make a great high priest, because why should I only be the king when I can be the king and the high priest? And sure enough, he waltzes into the temple and decides that he's going to take over the place and be the Kohen Gadol as well. And all of a sudden, he gets tzarat in the middle of his face, because it turns out you can't be both. You can either be a king or the Kohen, but you can't do both at the same time. And Herod is another great example of a guy who was king, and he didn't like the fact that the rabbis were not necessarily on his team for various reasons, and he would go around also killing rabbis. So whenever you have different branches of government, you're going to have infighting when people want to consolidate power and become tyrannical, and it's no different, unfortunately, in Jewish history. However, what's up? It's my roommate, Michael Tressel. How you doing, brother? So all of these branches, the king and the Kohen and the court, appear in our portion of Shoftim. Okay. Now, it's intuitive that you would have all of those things in the same portion, because they're all dealing with the government. So it's basically the portion of the Torah that deals with authority. It's the civil authority, it's the government, whatever you want to call it. If there was a Hebrew word for government, which I suppose there is, memshalah, that's basically what happens in this parsha. Now, it does advocate for a monarchy, for a king. Now, granted, the Torah was written a very long time ago, but I mean, it should know better, right? We don't really like the idea of having kings. Well, why don't we like the idea of kings? We the people, as they say in the preamble, we the people, why don't we like kings? Number one, it's a genetic lottery. Kings are a genetic lottery. So for every Darius you also get a Cambyses. For every amazing king, for every Aegon Targaryen, you're going to get an Aerys Targaryen. And that's basically the issue. The issue is you're going to have horrible, horrible tyrants, and they can do terrible things. What's up, Livy? Right? You're going to do terrible things. So you want to get rid of monarchs. It just doesn't make any sense. And there's no balance of power. There's no balance of power. One dude holds all the cards. So if he loves you, everything is wonderful and fantastic and hunky-dory, and it's good to be the king, and it's good to be the friend of the king. However, if the king doesn't like you, off with their head, you're finished, right? It's over. So that's another reason why you would not, what's up, Felix? That's just so you don't want kings. It's right, it's a terrible idea. It's funny, it's one of my favorite quotes, which I'm sure you guys no doubt remember from our class, but one of my favorite quote machines of all time, Winston Churchill, obviously, is the man.
The best form of government is the best form of
Give it
government.
to me, give it to me, give it to me.
Democracy, but it's the best one we've tried.
Oh, very close, very close. I'm very proud of you, by the way. Churchill said, famously about democracy, that it is the worst form of government,
But the best one.
except everything else we've tried. It's the worst form of government, except everything else we've tried. Well, why did he think that? Why did he think that democracy was not a good form of government? We who grow up in America, we're taught that, oh, this is great. This is the way that things should be done. This is how our ancestors, the Greeks, did it, and they knew what they were talking about. Well, it's terrible for a number of reasons. It's terrible for hey, Lisette, wow, long time. It's terrible for a number of reasons. Number one, the tyranny of the majority. See, in a democracy, all you need is 51%. If you have 51%, you can do whatever you want. You can thoroughly abuse 49% of the people with 51% of the people, let alone if it's 80-20 or 90-10. Then you can certainly abuse and just drag them over the coals and just do terrible, terrible things to the minority. So you have tyranny of the majority. Here's what that would look like. Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws. Putting Japanese people into internment camps, right? It's not like you can't have corruption in a democracy, right? That's one problem with democracy. And then there's a bigger and more obvious problem with democracy, which is that people are idiots. Right? People are idiots. They're morons. So basically what you're saying is, well, we think that it's reasonable to let, everyone decide what we should do with the treasury, with the national treasury. Should we build another aircraft carrier? Should we not build an aircraft carrier? Should we launch cruise missiles? Actually, they don't. Maybe they should ask the people if we should launch cruise missiles and not just one guy, but that's a different story. You have a bunch of morons running the country because they get to vote on who makes decisions. So you are going to allow, and there's no IQ test before you vote. There is no IQ test. If you live here, you get to vote. You don't even need a driver's license, actually, in many places. That's a problem. That's a problem, right? This is an issue. You can look at the jury system. You see the same thing. You're going to have 12. Because it's a representative democracy? Right. Right, so 60% of the idiots can elect whoever they want to run the country.
Well, it's not a true majority.
You mean you need a supermajority to pass things? You would need 60 in the Senate.
Well, I mean, for elections.
For elections, if you get 50, because you're saying electoral college.
Right.
Yeah, fair enough. That's true. So you have to have a plurality of a majority of the electoral college. That's true. Yeah, but the idea is the same, right? The bottom line is you're handing over the keys to the country to a bunch of morons. That you're doing. And by the way, everyone thinks that the country is filled with morons. How do you know that? Because you look at their Facebook page and everyone is saying, I can't believe these morons. So no matter who you are, you're one of the morons according to the other guy, and they're morons according to you. But one thing is certain, that everybody agrees that everyone else is morons. So that's a problem with the democratic system. It's a problem with the jury system. And by the way, the biggest symbol, the biggest, most obvious sign in your face to understand that democracy is a silly thing is that nothing other than government works that way. Your family's not a democracy. Like, can you imagine, right, dad gets his bonus. Dad gets his Christmas bonus, and, he worked really hard this year, and he gets his $100,000, and you've got 4 kids, right? So it's mom and dad and 4 kids, and dad walks in and says, okay, what should we do with my $100,000 bonus? And all the kids are like, Disney World, right? We're going to Disney World, and you're going to buy me this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And dad's like, no, that's a terrible idea. And mom's like, no, we're not doing that. And the kids say, we are 4 and you are 2, and 4 is more than 2. I say, yes, but you see, family is not a democracy. Family is a dictatorship. Family is a dictatorship. You know what else is a dictatorship? Every business, right? Every business has a majority owner. That guy who owns it. The NFL hey man, you know me. You know I'm all about the NFL. If Bob Kraft owns the Patriots, he makes the decision about the Patriots. That doesn't mean that people don't get to share their opinions. That doesn't mean if you're wise, you're going to want to ask for advice. You're going to want to bring people into the process. But at the end of the day, if you're not a shareholder, you don't get to vote. And if you're not the majority shareholder, you don't get to decide. So nothing runs democratically except government, which is the biggest, most expensive, most important thing that we're going to farm out. So it's not like, it's not shocking that Churchill said what he said, and this is a man who ran the government. So he understood this. Okay, fine. So we get it. Well, then, if that's the case, why is it worse to have a monarchy? If democracy is such a terrible system, and again, even we were a little harsh on the people, saying that they're morons. That's not true. It's not that people are idiots. It's that people don't have a nuanced understanding of what's actually happening. People believe whatever they're watching, whatever channel they're watching. So if you're watching CNN, you believe one thing, and if you're watching Fox News, you believe a very, very different thing. And if you're reading Drudge Report versus Huffington Post, you're going to get a different story. So why would you allow people who aren't experts to make these decisions? You don't let them vote on how to attack in the event of a war. You let the generals decide on how to attack because they're the pros. Now, in the case of a monarchy, technically you would be led by people who are pros. They know what they are doing. So why is it worse, according to great Sir Winston, why is it worse to have a monarchy? Well, it's very simple. It might look really good on paper, right? Monarchies look great on paper. Only problem is you have no control over a terrible monarch. I mean, short of like a coup or a secession. You have no control over them. The monarch can do whatever they want, which means that if you're crazy, if you have a crazy monarch and there's no balance of power, you can destroy the planet Earth. So many things, regardless of your politics, many things would have to go wrong for Donald Trump to destroy the world. Many things. And I hope those things don't happen. I hope to God those things don't happen. But many things would have to all go wrong simultaneously, again and again, with so many fail-safes in order for him to destroy the world. You understand that for Kim Jong-un to destroy the world, it's like, I didn't like breakfast. Boom. Boom. Because he's the king. He's a king. So you have one crackhead. And it's a major problem, right? Kim Jong-un is crazy. Another thing is we in America, we love our liberty, or at least we used to. We love our liberty. Well, liberty and the maintaining of your personal liberties is enshrined in our Constitution. That's essentially what the Constitution is, right? It's a document which limits the power of government. It limits the government's ability to take things away from the individual. Well, if you have a whole bunch of things that have to balance each other, and you've got all of these balances and checks, well, it's harder to take things away from people. If it's one dude, well, I want your vineyard in the case of Achav in Tanakh. I want your vineyard. I'm going to take your vineyard because I like it. They can't do that in this country. You have many layers of rules and balances that make it much harder to take away your rights. So again, to recap very simply, the reason in short that we don't like monarchies is number one, because they can destroy the world, or by the world, whatever the region happens to be. You plunge your country into war because you want to. And number two, because you lose liberties. You lose your liberty. So that's not to say that in a democracy you don't have certain curtailings of your liberties, right? You have to pay taxes, and you're forced. You could be forced to buy certain things or forced not to buy certain things, a la Supreme Court, and there are regulations. Right? Regulations is a nice word. Regulations means forcing you to do something or not to do something. Right? That's what it is. So you do obviously in any form of government, you're going to have to give up a certain amount of personal liberty in order to have a society. That's fine, we understand that, but at least there are layers and it's not just one guy on a whim. And therefore, Churchill is saying it may look really good on paper, but you roll those dice, and you're going to get really bad people X number of times. You're going to get terrible people. Okay, so we understand that. Either way, we recognize nowadays that monarchy is just a horrible idea. It's a horrible idea. So what's with the Torah? Like, you would expect the Torah to know that. So he was, no, Sprung, no, the Torah was written a long time ago. It didn't know any better. I love that. The Torah was written a long time ago. Now, if God wrote it now, then he would have known better. because God is trapped in the year, 2000 BC. He can't make it out of there. He's trapped in the little time cube, right? God is limited by time and space now. It never ceases to amaze me. I know this is tangential, but it tickles me. It tickles me. People say, the Torah used to make sense, but now it doesn't make any sense because now it's modern. But 1,000 years ago, it made perfect sense. Dude, 1,000 years ago, the Torah was 2,000 years old. It didn't make sense then either. The Torah didn't make sense to you in your society 1,000 years ago. You think it does, because wherever you are in your time and place, you're like, well, now it's not good. It was good then, but now it's different. So we've been there have been people that want to change this thing since it came out. Okay, it was never in vogue, and it was never supposed to be in vogue. But if God is outside of the limitations of time and space, then he can't make a mistake. It's not like something works now and doesn't work then. It's universal. It has to be universal. What's up, Julie? It's universal. So it can't be that. And we have to take a good hard look and understand what exactly it is that the Torah thinks is a good idea about monarchy. And that's what we're going to be dealing with. So in this week's Parsha, which we mentioned is called Shoftim. Well, Shoftim means judges. Judges, and in fact, the Torah opens up with the idea of judges. You have to have judges in every city, in your Jewish cities, whether it's in the land of Israel, whether it's out of Israel. You always have to have judges. Jewish lawyers. This is kind of what we've been doing for a very, very long time. And then when it finishes with the judges, it starts talking about the king. And when it finishes talking about the king, it starts talking about the priests, and then the prophets, and it goes through the whole rigmarole over there. What's strange is that you're calling the portion Shoftim. You're calling the portion judges. That's not so intuitive. It's not a function of judges. The issue is government. Right? So in our form of government here in the United States of America, we have a judicial branch and a legislative branch and an executive branch. So if you were giving a class on the various branches of government, you wouldn't call it legislature, you would call it government. And then within the course on government, you would learn about the legislature and about the executive, etc., etc. Why is the Torah any different? Why would we call our parsha Shoftim, judges? Now, I know what you're thinking. I get this all the time. No, because in the first sentence, in the portion, it talks about judges, and we name the portion, we just pick out a word from the first sentence, and that's what we call it. I think that's a very unfortunate misconception that people think that. That's basically the names of the parshas, they're just nicknames. We're going to call this one Fred, because he happens to show up in the first paragraph. No, that's not what it is. But I'll give it to you. I'll cede you that point, because I can't prove you wrong. It's just, I don't think it's true. But I can prove to you in this particular instance that is not the case, or at least it's not how the Rishonim saw it, because Maimonides writes about government in his entire book of law. He deals with everything, okay? And I mean everything. It's an absolutely exhaustive study of law. And the very final book, which deals with government, is called, drumroll please, Shoftim. He calls his book Shoftim. He didn't name his book because of the first word in the parsha, okay? And he didn't name his book because the parsha is called Shoftim. Because he changes words for things all the time. He, for example, calls the Beit HaMikdash, he calls the temple the Beit HaBechira, the house of the choice, the house of choice. The Torah doesn't call it Beit HaBechira. That's how he refers to it. So Rambam does not need to use names that come straight out of the Bible, and he doesn't. So the fact that he calls the book that deals with government, including monarchy, the fact that he calls the book of Shoftim, is difficult, and that requires understanding. So I don't think that it can't be that it's a first sentence issue. Furthermore, what's with why are you starting with judges? When you're in 7th grade or 6th grade, when do you do the branches of government? It's 6th or 7th grade, right? In social studies, when you learn about that, right about that. So you don't usually start with the legislature, and you don't usually start with the judiciary. You start with the executive, because everyone can relate to that. Kids can relate to the president. So first you talk about the presidency and the executive branch, and then you move on to the people that create the laws, and then finally you move on. The courts are always last, right? Because they're the ones, they always get shunted aside. They're the most boring of, you don't even vote on them, right? So they're always third. In our Parsha, they're first. It's a little bit counterintuitive to me. If I was writing it, I would have begun with the king. El Rey. Begin with the king. And then after the king, maybe the courts, maybe the Kohanim. Hello, welcome. Okay, that, they're kind of interchangeable to me. I'm not partial to either one of them. But certainly I would begin with the king. So the order of the Parsha seems a little bit off. It just seems a little bit off to me. And then finally, there's another very strange thing that happens in the Parsha, which is that the Torah, for some inexplicable reason, sticks Kohanes in the middle of the courts and in the middle of the king. The Torah is talking to you about a court system, and it says, and you will go, it's talking about the future, and one day you will have a question, and you will go to the Kohen and the judge that will be in that time. Well, you're telling me about the court system, so I understand why you would tell me, Uvata el hashofet asher yihiyeh bayamim hahem, and you will go to the judge who will be in that day. But why would you tell me, Uvata el hakohanim haleviim ve'el hashofet asher yihiyeh bayamim hahem? You will go to the Kohanim, the Levites, and to the judge that will be in that time. I don't know why you're immediately interjecting. You're sticking. Hey, Sammy, you're sticking a Kohen in the middle of the court, which is weird. And then it does that again by the monarch. It does it again by the king. It's very strange. It's talking about the king and all the laws of the things that he has to do and what he's not allowed to do. And it says that he will write a little set of a Torah scroll for himself. Al pi hakohanim halavim. Again, sticking the Kohen in the middle of everything. It's like, you know what it's like? It's almost like those people at the kotel, you're trying to daven and they stick their hands out because they want something. It's almost like the Kohens are sort of being very, very invasive. I hope we don't have any Kohanim here. Very invasive into what you're trying to do. You're going to get your own section, dude. Chill, tranquilo. First of all, you had the whole Leviticus, right? The entire Sefer Vayikra. The entire Leviticus was about you. Chill. Give somebody else their space. And then afterwards, after the Torah finishes with the king, it tells you about the Kohen anyway. So the Kohen gets his own section. Why does he have to go and edge everybody out of the way? It's very Jewish, really, very, and not the good Jewish. It's the other Jewish, the standing in line Jewish. It's not the good Jewish. Okay, so in order to understand these issues, we're going to have to go to the Nevi'im, to the prophets. The very first king of the Jews was who? First king of the Jews. Anybody? They can't see your faces. You can call out. It's not embarrassing. They can't see you. Shaul. Very good. Thank you. The first king was Shaul. I figured you would say David. That's what I figured. The first king of the Jews is Shaul. And the person, or Saul, or Saul, depending upon, if you're American or Latino or Israeli, it's either Shaul, Saul, or Saul. And he was anointed by Shmuel Hanavi, by Samuel the prophet, anointed him. Wonderful, marvelous. Well, before he anointed him, Samuel, was the judge. He was the shofet. He was in charge of everything. And the Jews come to Shmuel, and they ask for a king. Why? Because when Shmuel got old, he put his kids in charge, his sons. And his sons, the kids aren't always the pop, you know what I'm saying? Like Michael Jordan Jr. is not Michael Jordan. He just is not Michael Jordan. I don't know if Tiger Woods has any kids, but the chances that they're going to be as good as Papa, very, very small chance. So I will, LBJJ, right? So I will read to you. It says in the pasuk as follows: V'lo alchu banav bidrachav, and his sons. This is referring to Shmuel. His sons did not go in his ways. Vayitu achrei habatza, and they turned after bribes. They wanted bribes. Vayikhu shochad, they took bribery. Vayatu mishpat, and they perverted justice. They perverted justice because if this guy gave him money and that guy didn't give him money, or at least that's how it seems, then they would, side with the guy who was on their team. Vayizkabtzu kol ziknei Yisrael, so all of the elders of Israel gathered together. Vayavo el Shmuel haramata, and they came to Shmuel, the father, he's not an old man, but he died young, so he was already, as if he was old, maybe he was sick, I don't know, but he was on his way out, and they came to him in Ramah, where he lived. Vayamru elav, and they said, Hinei ata zakanta, you've gotten old. You're an old man. Again, maybe not in years, but you're acting very old. You're retired already. You're retired. You're Barry Sanders. You're retired at 30. You're out. That's the bottom line. You're out. And your sons have not gone in your way. They've not gone in your way. Ata now. Sima lanu melech l'shaftenu kechol hagoyim. Put for us a king to judge us like all the nations. Vayera hadavar beinei Shmuel. And this idea was bad. It was evil in the eyes of Shmuel. Kasher amru tena lanu melech l'shaftenu. That they said, give us a king to judge us. Vayitpalel Shmuel el Adonai. And Shmuel prays to Hashem. Vayomer Adonai el Shmuel. And God says to Shmuel, Shema b'kol ha'am. Listen to the nation. L'chol asher yomru elecha. Whatever they say, listen to them. Ki lo otcha ma'asu. They're not disgusted with you. Ki oti ma'asu mimloch alehem. They're disgusted with me from being a king over them. Shmuel, you know why? You know why the Jews want a king? It's not you, it's me. They're not sick of you, they're sick of me. So you can imagine it's almost like, God and Shmuel, lahavdil, like an old married couple, and they're arguing over which one the kid is being mean to, right? And mom is like, I can't believe that son of ours, he's mean to me. And the dad is like, to you he's mean? It's not you. He hates me even more than he hates you. It seems like they need to chill out a little bit. Right? That's what it seems like a little bit. It's like God and Shmuel have to go out and have a beer and kind of like tranquilo a little bit. They get very, very upset. So how did God react? How did Shmuel the prophet react when the Jews asked for a king? Very upset. Very, very upset. And I'm choosing my words judiciously because I know that Mikey Rotman is going to kill me if I say what I'm really thinking, but you know what I'm thinking, right? Very upset. Now, well, why are they upset? Why are they upset? You see, in our portion that we're going to read this Shabbos in Shul, it says that it will be when you come to the land that Hashem your God gives you, and you will say, Asima alai melech kechol hagoyim asher svivotai. I will put upon myself a king like all the nations that are around me. Som tasim alecha melech. You shall put a king upon you. There's a mitzvah in the Torah to have a king. So when the Jews come and ask Shmuel to make a king for them, why is he upset? Does Shmuel not know the verse? He doesn't know the pasuk? That's crazy. Of course he knows the pasuk. So why is he upset? So people say, no, Sprung, no. They asked wrong. You see, because the people said that you should give us a king, kichol hagoyim, like all the nations. The Jews aren't supposed to be like all the nations. The Jews are supposed to be different than the nations and do one of those, chosen people speeches. Yeah, that's wrong. At least I believe that's wrong. I'll tell you very strongly why I believe it's wrong. Because it says in the verse, Asima alai melech kechol hagoyim asher svivotai. I will put upon myself a king, kechol hagoyim, like all the nations that are around me. Those are the words. So the words in the Torah already say kechol hagoyim, and that's exactly what they say. They use this is the same words. So how can you say that God is upset at them for using the words that it says in the Torah? I mean, come on! You're on crazy pills. That's nuts. So you say, well, no, Sprung, it's not that. It's not that they said like all the nations. I'm fine with that. That wasn't the issue. You know what the issue was? The issue was they weren't ready. They weren't ready. They asked at the wrong time. It was the wrong time. They should have had a king, but they should have waited another 5 years before they had a king. They just didn't get the memo that it was the wrong time. I think this is a terrible shot. I'll tell you why it's a terrible shot. Does it say anywhere in the Torah how long you're supposed to wait until you ask for a king? No, it doesn't. It doesn't say anywhere. Look in the words, look in the verse, open the book, take a look. Doesn't say. And not only does it not say, but we rule, we posting, we conclude the law. If you look in the Rambam says, and I have it right here and I will quote it for you. Says the Rambam, Shalosh mitzvot nitztavu Yisrael b'shak nisatan la'aretz. There are tres mitzvahs that Jews are commanded, nitztavu. Jews are commanded to do 3 things when they get into the land. What are they? Limanot lahem melech, to appoint for themselves a king. Shene'emar, as it says, our parsha, som tasim alecha melech. You shall put upon yourself a king. Ulachritz rosh Amalek, and you have to kill the Amalek, and you have to build a Beit HaMikdash. Fine. What is the very first mitzvah the Jews have to do when they get? I mean, seriously, for crying out loud, the first mitzvah the Jews have to do when they get into the land is make a king. First one. So if anything, God should have been upset at them that they waited 200 years. They waited 200 years before they asked for the king. The problem is that they asked for the king. The problem is that they waited too long to ask for the king. So it's like, it's just very, very loco. So you go, well, they asked with the wrong intentions. They asked with the wrong intentions. Oh, I'm sorry, I did not know you were a psychic. Apparently, you know their intentions, despite the fact that it doesn't seem that the Torah tells you what their intentions were, and the Navi doesn't say what the intentions were, but you used your crystal ball and your palantir to somehow deduce the evil intentions of, like, give me a break. So that's a problem. This is a really, really big problem. Now, granted, in honesty, because we have to be intellectually honest, there is, in fact, a machloket. There is an argument as to whether the idea of a king in Judaism is a mitzvah or a reshut, whether it is a commandment or it is up to you. Up to you. You're allowed to. That's an argument. There are rabbis that say you must have a king, and there are rabbis that say you may have a king. Fine. That's true. Now again, we know what Rambam says. Rambam says must. Rambam doesn't deal with might. Rambam says must. Okay, but there are others that say might. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't help you with your question. Why not? Because even according to the ones who say that you don't have to, you're still allowed to. So there's no reason that God would get angry. It still doesn't answer the question that God and Shmuel are so angry at them for asking for the king. That wouldn't help you. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back all the way to the beginning. We said, why is it called Shoftim? It's weird. You should call it Memshalah, Srara, something that has to do with authority, government. A little more general than specifically judges. It's a little strange. And secondly, why are you starting with the courts and not the monarch? Well, you see, there's a misconception. There's a misconception. The Torah does not speak in ascending order. It speaks in descending order. Meaning, our question was, start with the king, right? He's the most important guy, and then he's not the most important guy. According to the Torah, who's the most important guy?
According to the
Oh, the Navi? Not even. Who comes first?
Judge.
The judge, the courts. The courts are the most important. Because it starts with them. Now, how do I know that's the case? Because look at all the way that the Torah lists things. It starts from the most important, and then it goes to the least important. For example, when it talks about the Mishkan, when it talks about the temple that you build, it starts with the most important thing, the Aron, the Ark. You begin with the Ark, and then you go through the various Kelim in descending order. When you're talking about the people who are going to be the spies or the Nisim, it starts with the most important and goes down to the least important. This is how it always works. You start up and you move down. If that is the case, then the courts are more important than the king. That's a real head scratcher. But clear, the message is clear. Well, by the way, the 10 Commandments also, right? The first commandment is, I am the Lord your God. Second, you shall have no other lords, but you understand. You start here and then you move down. So that means that the message that the Torah is swinging loud and clear is that the courts are more important than the king. And that's not an intuitive thing. But if you think about it a little bit more, you see that it has to be that way. It has to be that way. Because, tell me something, did we have in our history a period of Shoftim? There's a book called Shoftim. There's a book called Judges, which comes, by the way, before the book of Kings, Melachim. It's a few before, right? It's Yehoshua, Shoftim, Shmuel Aleph, Shmuel Bet, Melachim. So, the judges that we read about in the book of Shoftim, it doesn't talk about them as judges sitting around a table in a court case. They were political and military leaders. So judges are not only judges. Judges can also be political leaders. So they're more important than the king. Well then, that begs the question. Why do I need a king? Why do I need a king at all? What's the purpose of the king? You're not going to like what I'm going to tell you. Who knows, maybe you will. You know why you need a king? Janitorial services. The king is the head, most important custodian. He's a necessary evil. You see, if you have a gigantic bureaucracy, if you're running a country, well, you need roads. You need roads. Now, roads, granted, are not the most important piece of what's going on societally, but you need them. You need a military to guard you, to defend you against foreign invasion. You need people to make sure that Al Capone isn't running around beheading people, killing people, shooting people, hanging juries, hanging judges. That's what a king does. A king, very, very simply, maintains social order. That's all he does. That's all he is. That's all he is. Well, so what did they do wrong by asking? Now, you understand, if the Torah is telling you that both God and the prophet were so angry at what they did, it has to tell you what they did wrong, right? It can't just not tell you what they did wrong. It has to be in this verse. It has to be in the sentence. It has to be screaming at you loud and clear from the words. Well, guess what? It is. It is. It always is. Let's read it again. Let's read it a little bit more carefully. The Jews come to Shmuel, Vayomru elav, and they say to him, oh, I love you too, brother. Naaseh v'nishma. Yes, Rotem, I would agree. I would agree that Naaseh is more important, or at least it's more primary and fundamental. Maybe not ultimately, but it's more primary. Vayomru elav. They say to Shmuel, you're old and your kids didn't go in your ways. Ata now, Sima lanu melech, put for us a king, l'shaftenu kechol hagoyim, to judge us like all the nations. Vayera hadavar be'enei Shmuel. Listen carefully to the words. Vayera hadavar. And the matter was evil, bad. Be'enei Shmuel, in the eyes of Shmuel. Ka'asher amru, that they said, Tena lanu melech l'shaftenu. What does that mean? Tena lanu, give to us, melech, a king, l'shaftenu. To judge us. Oh, one second. The king doesn't judge you. The king is not a judge. That would be very bad. The king is a custodian. Why would you want a king to judge you? I want courts to judge you. I want Talmidei Chachamim, scholars, to judge you. The king isn't the scholar. You know who the king is? He's an excellent manager. He's a chief of operations. He needs to make sure that the garbage gets picked up, because if it doesn't, you have garbage in the street, and then you're going to have disease, and someone's got to make sure we don't have disease. You want the head custodian to be the judge? Why would you want that? Why would you want that? That's terrible. Well, there's only one reason that you would not want big tzaddikim and big scholars to judge you, and that's because you don't want scholars, right? You don't want scholars. Why don't you want scholars? You must have some agenda other than what the Torah's agenda is. And therefore God says to Shmuel, it's not you, it's me. They hate me. They don't want me judging them. They don't want me reigning over them. It's not magic. But the Torah is never about magic. The Torah is telling you God created a world, and God will give you the manual to this world, and he says this is how it works. I'm telling you this is how it works. The same way that science is consistent, and every time it's going to happen this way, God says, hey buddy, this is the manual, this is how it's going to go, let me show you. It ain't magic. You have laws. That's the guy who's leading your society. Not the doofus with the bulldozer. Not the doofus with the bulldozer. But you understand that even though, as we said, a king, you need somebody, you need an executive to run the things and make sure that the garbage is picked up, etc., and to pick up, not only to pick up the garbage and to pave the roads, but also to defend the country. This is a very dangerous custodian. This is a custodian with nuclear missiles. That's a problem. That is a dangerous problem. In Judaism, we have a constitutional monarchy. The king has to follow the law. The king is subject to the laws of the court like everybody else. He is subject to the laws like everybody else. You can say, well, the king can usurp all the... No, he can't. No, he can't. Now, if you say to people, one second, he doesn't have to listen to the law. He can throw away the law and not care. That's true. That could happen. And it's so sad because it did happen. It happened time and time again in Judaism. You know where else it happened? It happened in this country. It happened in this country. You think that can't happen in democracy? Have you ever heard of Andrew Jackson? Do you know how many people Andrew Jackson murdered in the Trail of Tears? He had Native Americans walking on a death march. And the Supreme Court said to him, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. That's what the Supreme Court said. Now, according to my understanding of checks and balances, if the Supreme Court says to the President of the United States of America that that is unconstitutional, he's not allowed to do it. And you know what he said to them?
I'm doing it.
Yeah. He said, stop me with your army. Well, it turns out that SCOTUS doesn't have an army, but POTUS does. So saying to me that, no, if you have a monarchy, then there's not going to be a balance of power because the king can usurp the power and not listen to the law, that's true about every single prime minister, president, of course it's true. Of course the people that run the system can ruin the system. Funny, the difference between run and ruin is an I. Of course you can do that. Of course you can do that. And it didn't work. Well, now let's think for a moment. So it means that the system is never the issue. Character is the issue. People are the issue. Well, let's go back. We mentioned in the beginning that we talk about the Kohanim inside of the portion of the king and inside the portion of the courts. That's not an accident. The reason that we do that is because the Kohen is not a formal authority. The Kohen is a moral authority. The courts and the king, in order for them to be effective, they have to have an influence of the Kohen. They have to have an influence of people who are holy to keep them on the straight and narrow. You'll notice if you read Parshat HaMelech, if you read about the king in this week's Parsha, you're only going to read about one thing. You're going to read about limitations. That's what it says. The entire document talks about limitations. He's not allowed to have too many wives. He's not allowed to have too much money. He's not allowed to have too many horses. He can't be, why? Because he can't be haughty. He can't be all uppity. I'm the king. I can do what I want. No, that's terrible. That's a tyrant. You're a custodian. You are the head custodian. Kindly make sure there are no potholes on Ocean Parkway. We pay enough property taxes. That's the idea. So the character is so important and so fundamental with the king. Why? Because you're playing with fire. Because when you have a country, you need a military. And if you have a military, there has to be someone running the military. And the person running the military can do terrible things. There is no other way. There's no other possible way. Call it democracy, call it monarchy. That doesn't make a difference. There's still one guy with his hand on the trigger. There's still that one guy. So you need to care about his character. So it's all about the character of the king. Our quintessential king in Judaism is David. And David's most operative feature was humility. He was humble. That's what made him such a great king. He was humble. The king is the ultimate servant of the people. It's like we said before, it doesn't matter what your system is. You can break it down. Abraham Lincoln threw out the Constitution. He suspended habeas corpus. You can always ruin a system. You can be the most democratic country in the world, and you can still pervert the system. Because the idea is never the system. The idea is the people. The idea is the people. Ultimately, it's about the character. And the truth is that the monarch can only do what his people tolerate. The people tolerate it. And when they stop tolerating it, you're not the king anymore. Whether it be this country, when we stop tolerating it, whether it was Gaddafi and they stopped tolerating it, or whether it's Venezuela and they're starting to stop tolerating it. They're starting to stop. It's the character of the people, and it's always the character of the people. So, let's recap from the beginning. Why is it called shoftim? Why not authority, government? Because government, according to Judaism, really is the courts. That's government. Government is the law. It's all about the law. We are a nation of law. That's what sets us apart. It's not about culture. Cultures come, cultures go, cultures shift, cultures change. Cultures are malleable. I like it this way. I like gefilte fish. I like cholent. You like chamin. And the law. We call Moshe the lawgiver. People, other people, other religions, they say, ours is the God of love. Yours is the God of law. Damn straight, baby. Mine is the God of law. That's right. He's the God of law. There are laws in science. There are laws in physics. And there are laws in Judaism. There are laws. Laws is what keeps it honest. Laws is what keeps it straight. Law is what keeps us an eternal nation. It's all about the law. Now, yeah, you have a bureaucracy, you need a king. So asking why the Torah suggests a king is like asking why there's a CEO in Apple Computers. Like you need somebody to run the show at the end of the day. But that's all he is. He's a glorified janitor. Now, since the custodian happens to hold the nuclear football with the codes to the intercontinental ballistic missiles of the country, you had better pick someone with excellent character. Otherwise, you're going to have some major, major problems. Major, major problems. Ladies and gentlemen, peace and love.